everybody for being here, and thank you for having us. The purpose of today's discussion is just to kind of give you an update on what's being worked on in Workday from the various project leads in HR, business office, finances, purchasing, budget. They're going to talk a little bit about what they're working on, some of the common questions that they're encountering, and then open it up for any questions that you have. And so this will be fairly free-form. It'll be based around mostly, what questions you have and what we can help you with.
Just want to kick it off. For those of you who haven't met me, I'm Brett Ingram, the Vice President for Information Technology. I'm probably the one people blame for foisting Workday on everybody to get them going. But just remember, before Workday, everybody was complaining about Integral. So no matter where we are, this is better than before. We're doing this because we had already done this for the leadership forum, which are the managers on campus. We've done it for the executive team. We wanted to make sure that the classified staff had an opportunity to hear the same thing, ask the same kinds of questions. But the reality is, every week we spend in Workday using it, we learn a little bit more, we figure out a few more things, so the need for this kind of forum becomes a little bit less. I suspect that we may want to do something 4 or 5 months from now, after people have used it for a while. And instead of just focusing on problems, because I'm hoping we don't sit on problems and questions for 5 or 6 months, that could be a time to say what's working well and not well, that we may want to revisit some of the business processes that have been created and just make sure that they're working as designed and as people get it. So I'm going to just talk about 2 of the biggest issues that occurred in the last month with Workday, and then turn it over to the leads to have them talk about things specific to their area. And I guess the very first thing we should talk about is payroll. Everybody enjoy getting paid 3 times last month? So in the too much information rule, let me tell you why that happened. That actually has nothing to do with Workday. We used to do payroll directly ourselves. We would send a file to Wells Fargo Bank, and they would go ahead and transfer the money from our account into your account for payroll. We thought that's what we were going to be doing this time around too, and so way early in the Workday process, we wrote what's called an integration to connect Workday to Wells Fargo. It worked. We then realized Workday doesn't do tax payments, which Integro used to do. So we needed to find a vendor who would send taxes out to us to the IRS and elsewhere. And we decided to go with ADP, the largest payroll processor in the country. So they wrote an integration to be able to have taxes done by ADP. And then someone said, rightfully, well, if we're using ADP to do our taxes, why don't we just use ADP to do payroll? Good idea. So we fixed the ADP integration to do payroll as well. We fast forward to the day we run payroll. We need to run some Wells Fargo integrations, but we didn't need to run that one. But the list was ambiguous. So when payroll went through and ran, it says, okay, go run these steps. One of them was run Wells Fargo. They ran it, you got paid. It then went to ADP, and there was a problem with it. So ADP didn't pay you. We didn't know that you had been paid once, right? Because no one should have run the Wells Fargo. We fixed the problem with the ADP file, we sent it to them again, went through the same steps again, you got paid a second time, right, because the Wells Fargo ran again. ADP didn't take it, because we had another bug. While we're trying to figure this out, phone calls start coming in from people going, how come I've been paid 2 days early? And then some people saying, how come I've been paid twice? And it's like, what? So we researched it and realized that we had never turned off the Wells Fargo integration. So the third time was the charm. That one was really from ADP, but we had to tell the bank now to reverse out the first 2 payroll bugs. That is not a Workday bug, it's not an IT bug, it's certainly not an HR bug, and it wasn't a Sierra Cedar, the consultant's bug. It was a step was in there. We ran the step dutifully each time, and no one knew that each time $3 million comes out of our bank account paying everybody. So 3 million, 6 million, 9 million, thank goodness we had enough money in the bank that didn't bounce anything. But we fixed it. That won't happen next time around. But it was kind of interesting to watch the money come in and go out and come in and go out. The other one that's not so funny is people are noticing that the payroll checks don't exactly match what you had in Integro. There could be 2 possible reasons. One could be there's a mistake in your withholding. We found some people at dental pre-tax instead of doing post-tax. But for the most part, those have been pretty much cleaned up. People let us know if they had big errors in their pay. Little errors, $1, 80 cents, those are rounding errors. And if you've got kids in high school, if you remember back to algebra, this is the notion of something called significant digits, right? When Workday does it, when Integro did its calculations of your pay, it went to far more than 2 decimal points, and then it would round up. And every calculation had a bit of rounding, so your paycheck was based on a bunch of rounding numbers. We go into Workday, Workday uses a different number of digits, and they do a different number of calculations to get at your paycheck. And so it rounds. No one is right or wrong, they're just different. And there's no way we can fix it, and there's likely no good way we're going to tell you exactly where in the process it's a problem. So if you've got errors or differences in your pay, don't assume Workday's wrong. You could have been paid wrong in Integral all these years. Just know if it's less than $1, less than 50 cents, don't worry about it. It's a rounding issue. If it's more than $1 or so, is that a good cutoff? Linda? It's more than $1 or so. If you know someone who's like that, just let HR know. Because indeed, we moved over a ton of data, and some of it didn't come over correctly. I mean, it happens. Just let's be clear, the vast majority of the data came over just fine, and after it was cleaned, it was just fine. But there are people who are gotchas. The Sierra Cedar folks said if it hadn't been for the little mix-up in paying me 3 times, this would have been one of the cleanest payroll runs for the first time that they've done. So we were really looking forward to this because we checked the accuracy multiple times, and we were pretty close. But those should be the only big problems that people have. The rest of it, and I'll let the leads talk, has to do with just learning how to do things differently. You know, it's not travel, it's a spend authorization. You know, they're not departments, they're cost centers. You know, and learning how to do this, each time you do it, it just gets a little easier. One thing I do know that will change, that I'll tee it off, and then I don't know who's going first, is one of the big changes we're looking to make is in how you enter time off requests. Right now, that form you use, you notice when you choose a leave type, instead of asking you in and out, it just changes and asks you how many hours. That's actually not the way you're going to be doing it going forward. Because there you have to do it a day at a time, right? On Tuesday, I'm going to take off 8 hours. On Wednesday, I'm going to take off 8 hours. The new way we're going to do this is you'll go in, you'll have a calendar, it'll say I'm taking 8 hours, starting on this date, ending on this date, and it just replicates it. Some of you may have supervisors who want to know specifically if you're taking less than a day, what hours you're gone. You'll have to put those in the comments field. Some don't care. For example, in IT, I seldom need to know which 4 hours someone's gone in a day. Unless, if Matt puts in something and I know he's got a key meeting on Friday, he's taking off 4 hours, I may send it back and say, how are you dealing with that meeting on Friday you cover? Other supervisors may say, just tell me the 4 hours you're doing, because if you're scheduling multiple people, you just need to know quickly when they're off. So you'll just do that in the comments field. I don't know when we're going to turn that on. The consultants have to finish redesigning this for us, but it should be in the next, I would think in the next month. I would hope we get that working. Does that seem right? Okay. Any big Workday overarching questions for me before we let each of the leads come up and remind you of things that I remind you of, and take any general questions, specific questions you might have? I mean, all in all, we think it works. I mean, it works better than before. You're seeing more information than you saw before. You have more access to more data than you had before. We've also delegated out more responsibility than before. Things that people used to do on your behalf, you now do yourself, and are shared, which is the way it should be. And we're going to keep tweaking. You know, we keep, as we hear things, we keep tweaking and trying to fix things. And some things we just can't fix. Like people getting 2 paychecks if you have 2 different jobs at the college. One managerial or salaried and one OPS. The system requires us to do 2 different paychecks. So some things we can't fix, and some names we can't change. I know people want to get away from spend authorizations, that's what they're called. The smart tax, or those new budgets, that's which Joe will talk about. And I'll take the heat for him on this one. That's a crutch to help people understand where we were in Integral and where we are in Workday. Those are going to go away. So you really should start learning the fund function, all that information, org center, all of that, org unit, because ultimately, probably a year from now, smart tags are going to get turned off. They're just a crutch to help you understand your old budget to your new budget. So, all right, with that, I'll hang out up here in case there's any bigger questions that come up. But if not, you want to?
Sure. Linda, actually, would you mind kicking us off with common issues that you're encountering in HR and any kind of announcements you want?
And if you go over to the center, they're recording this so that people who couldn't be here can at least watch the recording online.
Okay.
And if you need anything, you can log in.
I'm Linda Green. I'm from Human Resources. A lot of friendly faces, so thank you for being here. Some of the most common things we're hearing right now is time and annual leave, my heads are shaking. From Integro, they didn't integrate into Workday. Vanessa, Roberts, and Erica are working on those issues, and they're trying to go through and they're trying to make sure, but there's a lot of key factors that go into place. They have to go back into Integro, they have to look through, you know, payouts to make sure there wasn't time paid out. They're having to manually input all of those things. So that's a little time consuming. And so please be patient. They are working on it. The other thing that they're working on is the taxes. Some of the benefit, Jackie and Carolyn and Annis are working on some of the benefit issues, whether benefit wasn't deducted or whether it was, and it wasn't supposed to be. There was a slew of things that happened in the integration when people that have multiple jobs, a full-time job and a part-time job, well, FRS was being taken out where it shouldn't have been, because if you're in a full-time position, you're already paying Social Security, so you shouldn't be paying the FRS. So those type of things are being looked into and why in the integration. We also have, let's see, well, some of the other things we're seeing are payroll deductions, the healthcare. Is that what you're talking about, Susan?
Payroll deductions from your direct deposit.
So you're talking about like
that you couldn't do that, or there was an issue with that. So it took 8 days before my payroll deduction was deposited into me.
yes.
So as far as I'm concerned, I lost money, 8 days of insurance.
Yeah, and another thing is the time. Now when you put in time, before, when you had, you were putting in your 8 hours, or let's say you worked 7.25 hours, it was being calculated on a weekly basis. So at the end of the week, if you worked, you know, 70.25 hours, and I know that's over, but let's say 40.25 hours, it was rounding to the, and staying in that 2.5. So now in Workday, it's doing it on a daily. So if you come in and you work, you come in the morning and you come in at 8:05, it's going to say 8 o'clock. If you come in and you say, I got in at 8:08, it's going to round it to 8:15. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Anything after the 7-minute hour, it's going to round to the quarter, or it's going to round up. So, and it's doing it daily, and there's no fix for that. So that's just one thing to keep in mind when you're entering your time on a daily basis. The positions for those who, we did a lot of testing in the beginning phases. So there was a lot of positions that were created as test scenarios and stuff like that. Some of those positions we have found have rolled into the production tenant. So you may have positions out there that you don't normally have. And right now, of course, is working to get rid of those and to correct. So if there's a position that you know that isn't supposed to be there, or you're supposed to have a position there, Horace Wright is your contact in HR, and he can get those fixed for you. So right now, we're in the phase of deleting and adding and getting those things worked out. Benefits, Jackie and Annis and Carolyn. If you see that, you know, you're not supposed to be on CHP, you're supposed to be on Blue Cross Blue Shield, or if there's a deduction for, let's say, the faculty members, you're in the, what is it, the annual faculty, where you pay your dividends every year, and it's not being deducted, then that would be an Annis, Carolyn, or Jackie question, and they can get that fixed. I know that there's a bunch of them that they are having to do.
And then I just want to mention to speed up the process of resolving these problems and better documenting them and monitoring the progress, what we would really want you to do is just submit a hit ticket, because when that goes through, that person will know exactly to whom to forward it, and we can look at it. It will prompt us to take action if it hasn't been resolved within a certain amount of time. So the best way to do it and address these questions and problems is to submit a hit ticket.
One of the other areas that I know that there's been some confusion is hiring. Now the managers are having to do that process to kick it off, initiate it at your level. And I know that's something we're not used to, so we're always there to help. But one thing to keep in mind is the hiring process has not changed. So before you hire somebody, they do have to go for a background. So the background has to clear. And the contact for that is Elena Brazil. We're having some talk right now about the onboarding process, because when you go in and you hire a person, it is actually going through the process and allowing you to do, which it's supposed to do, and it's kicking off their username and their access. But what we're finding out is there's steps for HR that need to come first. We need to make sure that their background is clear. We need to make sure that they have turned in all the documents. There is a to-do step in there for them that requires them to come to HR to provide us their, driver's license, social, the stuff for their I-9 purposes and stuff. That, that's all it is in Workday, is a to-do. So if they don't, then, we've missed the compliance with I-9 purposes and stuff. So it's very important there is a business process that you can see at that hiring step, so that you can see every action that has been completed by that employee to make sure that everything has been done and to make sure that the college is in compliance. So they are working on that to kind of tweak it to make sure that we stay in compliance. But if you have questions, Elena Brazil is your contact for new hires. She will be happy to walk through with you and explain any processes that you have. Is there any questions? Maria?
I need to split my beneficiaries up. Like, I don't, what I'm saying? I need more than one beneficiary.
You can add. You can add.
So you just add?
You go in under your change beneficiaries.
It doesn't give you the option for the percentage though.
It does, because you can change the percentage to 50 and 50. You have to have 100% on your beneficiaries. So if you name one at 100%, that's all it's going to allow you. But if you change the percentage to say 50 and 50, it'll allow more. It has to total 100%.
One of the questions, like I requested a day off in the future, but when you hit submit, you have to hit it twice to make it official. The problem is if I submit, that's not what I work for the week, then I'm lying because that week hasn't happened. So how does that work?
Well, one thing to keep in mind, and I'm sorry, Greta, did you?
No, this is good. I did the same thing.
One thing to keep in mind is when you submit a leave, that's just going to let your supervisor approve that leave time. When that week comes, you can go in and finish out your weekly hours that you've worked. It'll just show that one block is already over.
So my question is, I've done it once and I didn't do it a second time because it says that's what you worked with. So should I submit it again so that she can see it officially?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And then I'll still have the option to look at it again when it's the real week?
Yep.
Okay. That's what I'm gonna ask.
I did the same thing. I clicked submit once and I'm wondering, why hasn't the president approved
Yeah.
my leave? It's like, for a second.
Yeah.
Will our TMSs be integrated into Workday as well? Will we be able to pull up an employee's TMS and fill it
Yes,
out?
and we're actually starting to work on that now, getting the TMSs done and everything. So that's going to be coming to where all of those will be integrated into Workday. You know? All right.
Prior to Workday, certain things would change in payroll, at least in my situation, as far as the payroll deduction, increasing the amount or whatever. When we went online, it was there as an added account. And then when there was this problem with my payroll deduction, and I went back in, it has been removed. Is there any reason why something like this would be happening, where you know something's already been in there and then it's been removed?
I would say that's a case, for an individual case, where you want to submit a help desk ticket so that we can go ahead and research it. Because there were some that were global issues that we needed to fix for everybody, but then there were a lot of one-offs where we'd have to go and research why particularly, what is it about your account, your payroll deductions that cause that. So if you would just send it in a help ticket, we'll make sure it gets routed to the right person and get the research done.
Well, I mean, this was something that needed emails, because that's how I was notified.
are working on it. I know that there was a bunch of different ones where they were either charged healthcare that they shouldn't have been, or the FRS that I was talking about. So they are going through one by one and getting those fixed.
Two HR-related things for folks. The first is, we get asked a lot of times how someone gets an email account. What's it take for a new hire to get an email account? Just so everyone's clear, IT cannot create email accounts manually. They have to come from Workday. And be triggering Workday as they need to be in the HCM system in Workday with a job, with an active assignment and a start date. So even pre-hire status, that works. It'll kick off getting an email account. Between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m., every time that's done, every 15 minutes we look and see if there's a new, automatically, if there's a new hire with a start date and active assignment, and then a message is sent to their supervisor with their email information. So it's the HR and the supervisor. So people call IT and ask, can we give an email account for someone who's starting? We cannot. It has to start through the process to HR because of our auditors. They want to know how we're provisioning and deprovisioning accounts, and so we talk to the auditors.
I have a question. If during the conversion, someone's name was brought over incorrectly, what is the process? Like it's misspelled, or I saw one yesterday where the young man's last name is listed as his first name in Workday. What do they do in those cases?
I can help you with that, and I have already corrected some. It's just a matter of going in and maintaining names. We've found some that, for example, there was one that was Tracy, but when it came into Workday, it was Trey. So I don't know if it was just a integration error, but we can go in and maintain the name and get it fixed. What it does is they can actually go in anytime that there's an issue with your names or anything. You can do a change legal name, and that's under your personal information.
But they have to provide something with that, right? Or should they do it?
If it's already in their, if it's their legal name, and it has to match the Social Security card, so please keep that in mind. We've had a lot of them come in where they want to add their middle name, but if that's not on your social, then our HR cannot put it in the system that way. So as long as it's on your social that way, then we can change it. And since they're already here, we should already have that Social Security card to make that change.
So should they put it on a P request, or how?
They can go into Workday and just do change legal name.
Second thing to let you know about, and I'm hoping you'll let everybody you know about tell the same thing, is we have a huge backlog of things sitting in people's inboxes in Workday that aren't getting acted on. So time entry for employees who aren't filling out timesheets online, approvals from managers who aren't approving the timesheets that those who have filled them out done online. What we did 2 weeks ago is we turned on a feature where everybody who has something sitting in their inbox gets an email message every morning, and their supervisor gets a message every morning, because we want to annoy people to remind them that you've got to go do something. Bad habit is to start getting in the habit of deleting those without reading them. You're getting it because there's something waiting for you to do. We would appreciate it if everybody would keep up with their inbox, especially those things that relate to payroll. Right? If people aren't entering their hours, they will not get paid. If supervisors don't approve their hours, they will not get paid. So we need to make sure everybody's doing this. We had the same conversation with the executive team yesterday. I did. So, and I shared with them the list of the 565, 570 items awaiting action all across Workday. Now, a lot of those are simple and innocuous. For example, every employee onboarded creates a backlog of issues because when they start the process, the employee still needs to wait a day or so to figure it out. There's like five items that could pop up in their inbox. We're not worried about this. We have a lot of time entry and other stuff that's 26, 27 days old that people just aren't doing. Some of them are grant-funded positions, which is actually a challenge because those folks now have to do this work, and the people supervising them, the DOE and elsewhere, have to do the approvals. But many of them are people on campus who just aren't keeping their inbox clean. So the people you work for, please ask them to just check their inbox and fill it out. If you have stuff in your inbox, please empty it. If you know people have it, we just need to get in the habit of cleaning it up. And the reason we send out the email messages is we didn't think everybody needed to log into Workday just to find out if something's waiting on you. So if you get a message, you can also change your notifications in Workday so that it tells you when there's something in your inbox for you to do. So you can, For example, I get it daily. Actually, some of them I get immediately. Most of them I get daily, so I know there's something for me to attend to. But if not, I get the NAB message the next morning telling me there's a bunch of stuff that happened overnight that I need to get to. So I just want to let you know because it's going to delay things. And before payroll runs, we are going to send a message out to all those folks to let them know.
Some of the grant people, when we come and look at our employees, they have the TCC email, but they also have, if they're part of the DOC, whatever, and I had mentioned that in payroll training, but I didn't. And I know it's gonna be the employee's part of the responsibility to put that in, but that's something that probably needs to be, so we need to contact them, and we don't know, like if it's somebody else's account or whatever. You know, I'm fumbling through to try to find where are they and what is their correct email, because I don't know how often they look at it.
So they can forward their TCC email to another account. So if they just go log in once, I mean, most of our students do this. They can go log in once and forward their TCC account to the DOE, DOC, wherever they need to forward it to, so at least they get the messages.
Okay.
And they need to know the username and password. That used to be an issue. People didn't know it. They don't have to know it now, but they would have felt their time in Workday.
Right.
So, yeah, they can log in Office 365 and forward their mail to whatever account they want.
Cool.
Yeah. We probably even have a help sheet out there. If not, we can create one.
Can you like adjust certain people's emails as far as what's in their inbox waiting on their action? Because I have 7 days to process travel, and I do it like in 3 days, not even 3 days. Sometimes I do it in 2 days. So it's kind of like, okay, I got you. When I get the email, what are you talking about? I just got that yesterday. You know what I'm saying?
So the email is interesting. Workday, the only thing we can do with Workday is you'll get the email reminder when the business process says, whether when it's new or when the business process says it's overdue. Some of our business processes have a 2-day time period, and so you're getting it on day 3. If you're telling me that the reality is the college needs to change the business process, that 2 days is too soon, we want it to be 5 or 6, the business process owner can do that. We can change it so that, right, that will tell you it's a 6-day process instead of a 2-day process. But a lot of them were guesses as to how soon we wanted people to turn things around between when we popped in their inbox.
I think travel should be a little more gratuitous. Oh, sorry.
Huh?
She already took care of it.
Change it to 7?
She know though.
Change it to 7? Yeah, so just so you know, many of the, if we didn't, I think this is correct, if we didn't expressly tell Workday how many days, it assumes 2. For no particular reason other than it assumes 2.
The only problem with it though is that in Workday, can't get around it, I guess. They are calendar days,
Yes.
not business days, which
That's
Right.
is a whole different, because of course it counts the weekend and everything else.
But the NAGNet, so what I told the executive team yesterday, and when I gave it to them, it has how many days past due. I said, anything less than 6 or 7, just don't worry about it. Chances are good people are working on it. The only ones people really need to worry about is if you've been nagged 7, 8 times for the same thing, yeah, we probably need to do something. But yeah, that's a perfect example. If we're finding that some VP is reminding people too often or too soon, we'll change it.
Thank you, sir.
No, thanks, Pat. So it's, with that, Pat.
Can we do, because
Sure, if you want.
the order, can we do budget then purchasing, because all mine gonna flow back to all of that.
Sure, Joe, mind coming up so they can get you on?
Please, thank you.
Sure.
Good morning. Jim Neely from the Budget Office. And I'll just talk about a couple of common things I'm seeing confusing people greatly. Something I call integral thinking. We're still looking at our budgets as we used to look at them in integral. That's okay to get us over the hump to find out where our budget is at Workday. You can use that to say, all right, I had a budget here. I want to see what I had before starting off with Workday. So I'm going to take a look at that. I want history prior to March 31st. Yes, go into Integro and look back to see what you have. April 1st forward, you'll of course you need to work that. But the most common thing I'm seeing is people are still thinking in terms of those smart tags. One of the handicaps of the smart tag is you think, well, I've got a smart tag, that's my old Integro budget number. It must be where my budget is now. In reality, budget is rolled up in another category, and that's called that's went blank. Cost center. Thank you. The cost centers often can contain a Fund 1 budget, a Fund 3 budget, Fund 6 even maybe, depending on how your budget's done. So one of the important things in training I've had to emphasize is when you're looking at a cost center, try to find your previous integral budget, make sure you put that fund in there, Fund 1, Fund 2, whatever it may be, when you're looking at your cost center, because the cost center looks at everything at a 50,000 foot level. It looks as if a manager were running a corporation, let's say, and wants to see all its divisions at once. But as we know, in reality, we operate by fund, Fund 1, Fund 2, whatever. So we need to look at our work tags, make sure that we're looking at the right thing. And that's the most common problem I've seen when trying to find your budget. Another thing you perhaps mentioning is the smart tag itself. It's a great tool to get you over the hump, to learn. But also, when you're doing anything in budget, you need to remember that there's another function in there, the work tag, that you need to remember, and it could be, it's the program. A lot of you, especially in healthcare, various issues, have a program as well as a cost center. So you got a cost center, fund, function, and then you have a program. So you have to remember the budget could be hidden in that program. These are by request, by the way. Programs were set up for small expense issues that are ongoing, but they don't really need their own cost center. They're usually under $2,000, for example, and they do one thing a year, or two things a year, like the faculty luncheon might be a program, would be a good example. Or Take Stock in Children, it only has an expense budget, so we put it in a smaller program. It's easier to manage, easier to see, and you can see it in a separate budget place. So that is something to remember. So whenever you're looking at your budget, remember, you have to know what you're looking at first. You got to know what you want to see, and you can still use your old integral name for the most part, so it'll still have a name. Keep in mind that Workday's smart. If I put in take, it tells me everything with a name take in it, and it shows me, oh, Take Stock in Children. I can select that, and I don't even know what the program was. But that's, if any of you's used it a lot, just use that tool, because that'll keep you mad to run all over the place to find the various work tags you need. Is that fairly clear on that one? Okay. The other thing I'd like to discuss briefly is costing allocations, because I do those for you now, especially on new hires or any changes. Keep that same thing in mind. The smart tag needs to be on there to get them paid properly at this time until those go away. You need cost center, fund, function, program, if it has one, and it could have a project as well. So if you know it has a project, we can put that on there as well. I'll be sending back everything that doesn't have those factors and location, because simply payroll will run correctly, it will get taken out of the correct budget, and we'll be going back, moving the money back and forth. So it's very confusing at that point to try to get it done. One of the things we're working diligently on to get you to is a good labor distribution report, so you can tell who's being paid out and where. That's something that we're working diligently on. Like I say, we have the budget out there, and you can see to a certain extent who's paid. But to really see the old-fashioned report we're used to seeing, we're having that expedited to get that report to you, so we can actually see, in some cases, what's being paid out of your budget incorrectly. We'll get that straightened out as soon as we can. As for budget amendments, I have a few questions on those. Any budget transfer, I'll call it, we used to call it transfer, Workday calls it amendment. Any transfers will be handled the same way they always were. If you send out a requisition, for example, and it doesn't have enough money, that's going to kick it back, and it's going to have a note on it to say, you don't have enough budget. And on a pooled level, does everybody understand pooled, summary level? Expenses are just like they always were. The GL, we used to call them GLs, that was spend categories, all total up to a certain category. If you exceed that category, you're overspent. We also do a budget check at the detail level, but that won't give you anything but a warning. You can override that. Any questions on that? Go ahead, Pat.
Couple questions, because I get a lot of these calls. How can they review their budgets? Can you talk about whether they go to the budget to actuals report, whether there's some other kind of report? How can they see their budgets, or will all of them have access to that, or is it access at a certain level?
Good question. The access is that I can assign, or the cost center manager, who's the person who has the right, if you will, to start a transaction and actually approve it in that budget, and then the cost center financial analyst who has view access. So most of you will have view access. So you would go into a report called Manager Budget to Actuals, detail. And that's a report you'll use there to input your data. One of the best things I see about Workday in that regard is you go to the top line when you're looking at it on the box, it will say My Organizations. You'll hit on that and it'll give you just the organizations you have access to. In other words, you won't have to remember every call center at TCC. It will have you limited to the ones you have access to. If you don't have access to a budget and you need to see it, just send me an email and I'll put you on, or help ticket, and I will put you on as soon as possible. But you'll use a Manager Budget to Actual detail.
So does this take the place of what people were used to looking at a departmental ledger?
Correct.
Okay, I mean, I just want to.
Correct. It looks similar to the budget tab, but it'll have a revenue box at the top. A lot of people got used to it because we also use this for Fund 3 revenue budgets. As to Fund 6 budgets, we're working on a report to get those where you can see them, because they have cash and they have GL2s. We're going to have to modify our report, but we're also working on that. Yes, ma'am.
I'm not sure if you addressed this before, but say I'm going in to do a requisition and I need a smart tag number, but I know I can look at the cost center, and in the cost center I have a lot of budget numbers. But I need to know, since it's asking me for the smart tag number, I need to know what budget I'm going to link to that in reference to the smart tag.
Good.
But then I can't see within the budget actual screen, it doesn't drill down. It's giving me an overall of how much, say, supplies, all my supplies. It gives me an overall within that cost center, which consists of a lot of budgets in that cost center. But I need to know what budget has the money that I can put in for the cost center. Does that make sense?
Well, it depends. Is it all Fund 1 budget?
In the manager budget to actuals, I hit Fund 1, but I need to know what budget
is coming
within
out.
that cost center.
That's the kind of thing that, first of all, there's something called Find Smart Tags. I assume you found that.
Yes, I have.
Find Smart Tags gives you the old Integro budget number you're looking for to see where your budget is in Workday. In other words, cost center, fund, function, program, if it has one, or product. So when you go to Find Smart Tags and you put in that old budget number, you'll see where it's located. As I said before, we're not thinking in Integro. Workday looks at the cost center is, why did we have 3 leadership accounts? For example, at one point my best example would be in Integro. We had 3 different leadership budgets in different areas by the same cost center manager. We've simply rolled those together now and said, hey, it's all leadership. So we have one budget now. So you're not looking at budgets anymore by the Integro account number. You're looking at it by the Workday cost center and fund. So you don't have to worry about, if I've got travel, I've got travel. I don't have travel a little here, a little here, a little here.
That I understand, but with the smart tag, that's where that budget, that number is coming in. So I need to know, for me to put that number in there, I need to know, okay, what budget it is that I'm putting in.
Okay. Yeah, well, I think we'll address that separately, because I'm not sure I'm following. Anything else?
Yes, I have one more. Just like an FYI, if someone requests that a program be set up that was not set up when we first did the integration, just a reminder that if you do that, you need to identify if you have any open POs, changes need to be made on, because if we go to make a payment, it stops at that point because it doesn't agree with the structure that's set up. So if you are defining programs as we move forward, just know that it affects anything you already have in the system that's open. So you may want to, if nothing else, check your POs to make sure.
Good point, Pat, because it gets stuck basically. Now you submitted it one way, and now you've changed it on us. It needs a program, and it's going to be stuck in your query. It won't go anywhere basically until we get that fixed. So program changes are very important, and I'm gonna look to you to initiate them. But for the ones that were already created, you'll need to take a look out there and find out what your programs are by looking at the smart tags. You'll be able to see that. It's designated by PG in front of the number, or could be anything else, but that's for just programs, we use PG designation. Anything else? As I said, budget amendments are handled the same way they used to be. You do either email or you put me a little note at the back, the bottom, a little memo screen on Workday, and say, Joe, I need to this call center, this
Help ticket, whatever works.
help ticket, whatever works for you.
I'm sorry, I got one more. When will budget checking be turned on?
Budget checking, the detail level's already on. Right now, until we get payroll fixed, as we said, we've got some costing allocation issues, we'll leave the summary level off right now.
Okay.
The hope is to turn it on as soon as payroll's clean.
As soon as we get clean, we certainly will, we're ready to do it.
All right.
Any other questions?
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you very much.
One thing to follow up on what Joe said is you talked about getting you reports. That is actually one of the best things we're going to start to do in the future is to give you reports and dashboards to give you more access to things. Problem is Margaret Wingate is leading the charge there, and she's spending a lot of time running a lot of internal facing reports to make sure payroll's clean, to make sure budgeting is done, because she's our guru with respect to getting reports done. Once we get that all done, remember we're only live on this a month, once we get that all done, we're going to start turning towards useful reports that will be made available to people across campus, so you'll be able to see things that will be important to you budget-wise, HR-wise, etc. So more to come on budgets and dashboards, but once we're good with everything else. Bobby Lynn-Pack, please.
Good morning. I'm Bobby Henson. I'm out of the purchasing office. For those of you that do requisitions in your office, when you go into Workday, there's basically two types of requisitions that we do here on campus. When you log in, you'll see one tab that says Connect to Supplier Website. Basically in Workday, we chose two vendors to do that with. First one being Office Depot for supplies only, not printing, supplies only. For those of you that do order business cards, they are on that site also. But all those of you that have printing in your office, it's done a separate way. So we've got Office Depot punch out for supplies only and also for WW Granger. So if you're getting ready to order your pens, pencils, paper, you will not go in and create a regular requisition in Workday. You will click on that tab that says Connect to Supplier Website. When you do, it takes you out to Office Depot's website. You do your shopping, you buy your pens, pencils, paper just like you did before. Come to the bottom and check out. It brings you back into Workday, shows you what you've done. You hit submit, it then goes to your budget manager for approval. Then once they approve it, it goes to Office Depot and you get your items. The other type of purchases we do is listed on the screen as create ad hoc requisition for goods and services. Whenever you click that tab, it opens up a screen to where you start your requisition at that point. On that screen, yes ma'am?
With the business cards, and you said that's on the punch-out website.
Yes,
Is it
ma'am.
still under the tab copy and print?
Yeah, somewhere within there.
Okay.
So your other type is to create ad hoc request, and then whenever you click that button, it opens up the screen where you begin to start your requisition. As part of that opening screen, you will see a section called non-catalog request. And on that, you're going to see request goods, you're going to see request service. In Workday, the radio button is defaulting to request goods. You will leave it there if you're going to do a standard or prepaid or a blanket type of purchase order. If you're fixing to order services, you need to click on the request service radio button. You cannot create a goods type of requisition and enter a service type item, or once the first payment is made, it will close your PO. But having found that out, because this was a brand new feature in Workday 24, which came out 2 days probably before we went live, when we first did our original training, this little feature wasn't on that screen, and we were told to tell y'all to do it such and such way. But going forward, number one, we won't let your requisition go through if it's wrong, but to save yourself a step from having to have it kicked back to you and having to revise it, you've got, it's a goods, choose the goods line. That's a service, move your radio button to the request service line. Whenever you complete your requisitions, they're done the same way as you did back in EagleNet, with the exception, please make a note of this, and you've seen it probably in several emails going out, blanket requisitions and POs. Within a blanket, you have to kind of flip-flop your brain and go to the other side. Your quantity is going to be the total that you want this PO. So I want to do a $10,000 blanket PO. Your quantity is 10,000 each. Your unit price is $1. When it's all said and done, you have created a $10,000 blanket PO. That way, when the business office gets these little $5 invoices, $10 invoice, they pay it, your total starts coming down. There again, we won't let this go through, we're spotting it, because if you created it, each blanket PO, $10,000, first time business office paid that $5 invoice, your PO just got closed and you had to start all over. But these are, we're catching them, they're not gonna go through, but just to speed things up, keep that in mind. A blanket is the only squirrely one in the bunch. You just reverse the amount to be the quantity. The unit price is $1. Any questions on those thus far? Everything seems to be moving fairly good there. If you go in, as you all know, when we went into Workday, we wanted to clean up our vendor environment. So we did not bring forward any vendors out of Integro. It was a mess. We had vendors in there multiple times with all wrong information. So we required all vendors to go back in and re-register. So if you go into Workday, go to do your requisition for XYZ vendor, and they're not there, then you will need to have your vendor go to that link that we've sent out a zillion times and register. And if you communicate to your vendor, a lot of the problems we have with vendor registration is the vendors put in a dash, put in a space, comma, whatever, and they fill out the application, they wait a couple of days, and they say, well, you know, why am I not in your system? They get this error message, da-da-da, and y'all send it to me, and my reply back to you and them is, don't put in any dashes, spaces, commas, just do it just like the form, voila, it goes through. And if they're successful, they get a little screen that pops up, hey, we received your application, you're good. Now keep in mind with Workday, the way they've chosen to bring vendors in, if your vendor registers right now, 5 minutes till 12, at 12:01 today, they will be in Workday. If your vendor waits till 12:05 to register, they will not be pulled in until 12 o'clock the next day. The vendors are pulled in at 12 o'clock each day. They get in before 12, they're in today, they get in after 12 today, it's after 12 tomorrow before they appear. So,
is it possible, because in Workday, when we go to print, say, a check, that the maximum number of characters for a vendor's name is 40? Is there, I guess we need to let them know, I don't really want to tell them to change it, I don't know, but when they get their checks, they're not going to have their full name on the check if it's more than 40 characters. And I don't know that we knew that until we started making some payments, but I get that error every time I try to, print. So I just wanted to FYI you on that.
Okay. About the only thing we could do is, get with IT and have them put something on the vendor application, you know, in parentheses, maximum number of characters, 40 per vendor name. Yes, ma'am?
When the vendor, the supplier is putting the information into the system, and they're required to put, and I'm referring to checks, they're required to put an address.
Remit to.
Right, or remit to address. Are they allowed to put more than one address in the system now?
Not on the application, no.
So they would have to register more than once, however many times,
Well,
however
I
many
mean,
addresses that they need.
And understand, let's just pretend we're talking Home Depot, and we've got 3 Home Depots in town. Home Depot registering one time over here on Capitol Circle Southwest is not Home Depot across town on Capitol Circle Northeast. So if you've got a vendor that has multiple locations, they're gonna have to register multiple locations in order for us to do business. So if you just arbitrarily look in the system, pull up Home Depot, better make sure as to where that Home Depot is, because if you've got your quote from Home Depot across town, your PO may be going to Home Depot right down the street here. But what we do with the POs is, in Workday, we require all vendors to give us a valid email address, and that's how your vendors are receiving our POs now. We're not printing them, we're not scanning them, we're not faxing them to any of the vendors. They are going out electronically to your vendor by email. For any of you that have been to any of the purchasing training classes, if you're one of these that wants to print a paper copy, has to have that paper copy, there is a function within Workday where you